So lately I've been doing a couple live streams because I wanted to get better at recording commentary on the fly. I wanted to get better at recording commentary without having to stop after every sentence to make sure I didn't say anything stupid. So we're going to see how that worked out. This is Cadash. We have a choice between the fighter and mage character. The fighter is easier to play the game with. It's basically a choice of whether you want to think or not. If you want to think, play as a mage. If you don't want to think, play as the fighter. This is one of my favorite Genesis games. I don't know if I'd call it my favorite, but it's up there. And it's my favorite for a really bland reason. This game is just nice to the player. There are a lot of action RPGs that came out around this period that just weren't nice to the player at all. You could compare this game to, say, Zelda 2, or Rygar, or Ys 3, or Simon's Quest. This game is a lot nicer than those games. All of the characters talk like real people, and they give tutorials to you and tell you what to do to progress, even when it's obvious. Like, these treasure chests open automatically, but the guy still told us that that they have items for our journey. That dialogue didn't need to be there, but it is. You know? Our enemy in this game is the Balrog, the villainous Balrog, which is just a monster guy. In the Japanese version and the TurboGrafx version, his name is Balrog, which makes more sense because I don't think you're allowed to use the name Balrog. I think that may be copyrighted. I could be wrong. That door that the guard is standing next to, we can't go in it, but we'll see it later. That's foreshadowing. Export foreshadowing on my part. This guard tells us this game consists of 5 countries, or 5 levels or worlds if you want to talk in traditional video game terms, but I think of this as an RPG, and it is an action RPG, but it's also an action platformer. But I think of this mostly as an RPG adventure game, so I don't really say it has levels or anything like that. It is non-linear. There's NPCs to talk to, there's a lot of grinding to do, there's stuff to buy. It's a short RPG, yes, but I think it's a full-fledged RPG. And all the NPCs have fun and interesting things to talk to, or they have tutorial to give us. And you may notice they don't talk in gibberish, they talk in plain English and tell us plainly what we need to do, how to get there, and what we can expect to happen. Like, that guy didn't give us some sort of vague hint about the shops, he just says, hey, there are shops that you can buy stuff from. And this guy's like, hey, there's a boss in the cave. But he worded it in a way that makes sense, you know? He's like, legend says there's an evil monster down there. It's like, cool, I want to fight an evil monster, I'm a hero. So one of the most important things to remember about this game, especially if you're playing as the mage like we are, is that stats really, really matter. I am going to be doing a lot of grinding. These first enemies, these pig enemies, have a brief animation where they pull their club back before bringing it down, and that's when you need to strike as the mage. If you're playing as the fighter, you can just smash the attack button because the fighter has a longer reach. But if you're playing as a mage, you have to think a little more strategically. Anyway, we're going to grind against these pigs until we reach level 5, because I think that will be an adequate level to conquer this dungeon and beat the boss. As the mage levels up, in addition to getting more defense, more strength, and more hit points just like the fighter, he also gains spells, which the fighter does not gain. The mage has quite a few spells. We'll try to use all of them at least once, but I think we're only going to get to use the basic spell, the fireball, one time, because it's just not all that interesting compared to every other spell. It's not terribly useful after you get the second spell, because the second spell is just the first one, but better. We might have a use for it right here, though, while we climb this rope. Standing in water does hurt us, by the way. But anyway, like I said, the mage can't reach quite as far as the fighter, so using the fireball might be a good idea right here. There we go, we used the fireball and killed the pig. You couldn't see the fireball, but I used it. To destroy these skeletons, we have to duck an attack. It's not all that hard. They take a while to attack back. So just walk up to him, duck, and press the attack button. We're going to be doing a lot of melee attacking even though we're the mage, because his spells have a small wind-up, and that small wind-up makes a world of difference. So really basic hazard, just climb on the ropes, jump over the eyeballs. Really basic stuff. These spiders down here can shoot us with webs, which will tangle our legs. and deals small amounts of damage the longer we have the webs on our legs. It doesn't poison us or anything, though. Not yet. We'll have to worry about status effects later. Mostly just the one status effect, the status effect being poison. You can see I started using a new spell there, the Flying Daggers spell, which, as the name implies, makes daggers fly around us. That's going to be instrumental to fighting the first boss. For nearly 2, by the way. The dungeons in this game are quite short. As this is quite a short game, it was originally an arcade game. And you can see some of that still in the design. But I think for the most part it made the transition to console very well. Anyway, here's the first boss battle against the Black Pudding, which is a Dungeons & Dragons monster, not a very well-known one, but it is. The Flying Daggers make very short work of it, though. Kill it very, very quickly. It's much harder to fight with the fighter. So that was basically the tutorial dungeon. What did it teach us? Well, we need to level up. That's basically what that teaches us. If you can make it through the tutorial dungeon, great, you can make it through the rest of the game, no problem. If you couldn't make it through the tutorial dungeon, you're probably trying to play the game like a regular action platformer instead of an RPG, and that's why you died. Because trying to defeat the Black Pudding as a level 1 warrior or level 1 mage doesn't work. You will die very quickly. Alright, welcome to the second country, the Town of Marinade. I remember Marinade the most out of all the locations because it's, you know, really near to the start. And it has a really memorable storyline compared to the others. This town sacrificed a young woman to the Kraken in the caves, and we need to go save her. I mean, I guess I shouldn't blame the townsfolk for sacrificing a young girl to the Kraken, assuming the Kraken actually asked for a young girl. You know, if the Kraken asked for a sickly person instead and you gave them a perfectly healthy young girl, I don't think that's alright. And no, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that a sickly person would be preferable because of some weird ethical reason. I'm saying you should respect the Kraken's personal taste. Like, if the Kraken thinks sick people taste better, then you should really feed the Kraken sick people, you know? You shouldn't cheap out. I don't care how much you like that sick person, you know, your town's at stake. Or it's time to buy new weapons. And new armor. As a trade-off for the mage having spells, he has less weapons and armor than the knight does. He gets less staffs and staves. He gets less staves and less robes. The fighter, on the other hand, gets swords, armor, and helmets. Oh, and shields. Well, the mage only gets 2 kinds of equipment, robes and staves, and he doesn't get a lot of those. So that's kind of the trade-off in variety. This little boy right here says he saw the spring in the cave where the mermaid lives. That's good, I guess we know where the mermaid is. And this mother threatens to feed her little child to the Kraken. Someone should probably get that child away from their mother. That's horrifying. Anyway, in this house is the old woman, who is the mother of the young lady that was sacrificed to the Kraken. This old woman doesn't get a name, just like the young lady does not get a name for some reason. It would be much easier if the young girl got a name, so that way I could refer to her as something besides the young girl. That would be ideal. So this old lady can... Oh, hey, there's a spider on my wall. That's kind of terrifying. So this old lady feeds us her pretty convincing sob story about how that young girl that was sacrificed to the Kraken was really the only love she had in her life, and she's so alone, and she loved that girl more than anything, and we need to go rescue her. Which we were going to do anyway, because we're heroes. That's what we do. But not before a quick stop in the item shop. You know, heroes need to be prepared. That's a part they don't really show you. But if you play a tabletop RPG, you would understand. Heroes need to be prepared. They need medicinal herbs, they need extra lives, they need all that good stuff. We can buy a lot of extra lives, by the way. Those are actually continues. That's why they look like coins, because this used to be an arcade game. But speaking of items, the items use themselves automatically. For example, if we were to hit 0 health, the medicinal herbs we have would automatically use themselves, and they would heal us 30 hit points, so that's handy. We're going to meet a new enemy type here besides these frogs, which are pretty easy to take care of. These goblins that throw bones in an arc. The goblins are pretty simple to take care of, just walk toward them. Do not jump, do not walk away from them, simply walk toward them. And we're going to grind against these goblins and frogs until we reach level 7. at which point we will be ready to take on the Kraken and the rest of this dungeon. A benefit to grinding like this, aside from just leveling up, we also get a lot of extra money that we can use to buy more items, more extra lives, more armor, which is equally important, because that is also instrumental to our success in this game. This game's not hard by any means. Like, one of the reasons I love this game so much is I feel like anyone could beat this game easily. It's a matter of preparation, it's a matter of grinding adequately, it's a matter of buying enough items. It's just a matter of preparation and managing your resources, and it's a simple game. So after you figure out that it's about grinding and resource management, then you're good. And it's not like the grinding is excessive, because the game's only 90 minutes long. So yeah, I think this is pretty much an easy game for anybody to play, assuming they know how to approach it. And the way to approach it is like an RPG, as I've been doing. I mean, you could approach it as a regular action game, if you're that good, but the RPG mechanics are still important. I've never actually played the arcade version of this game or the TurboGrafx version of this game, by the way. I've only played the Genesis port. And I quite like the Genesis port because, you know, it's like a light action RPG. And like I said, it's approachable. I think anybody could play and beat this game. Anybody with working hands and eyes, I mean. Because it's really about preparation, is what this game is about. You prepare yourself enough, you can tank anything. And there's quite a lot of variety in scenery. There's a gnat in my eye. There's quite a lot of variety in scenery and weaponry and spells. It's especially fun with 2 players. You know, I tried live streaming to prepare for more consistent commentary that wouldn't be interrupted as easily by me losing my train of thought. And there are these bugs everywhere. Yes, I know spiders are not bugs. There are these bugs everywhere. And I'm just trying to focus on commentating over Cadash, which is one of my favorite Genesis games. Anyway, I'm only familiar with the Genesis version. The original version is an arcade game, and it did get a TurboGrafx port in addition to this Genesis port. As far as I know, this Genesis port only exists in America. I don't believe there was a Sega Mega Drive version, and I don't think it was even released in Japan, which is odd. It's odd that this game would only be released in America. I don't know if the arcade cabinet for Cadash was really popular in America, or what. I could always be wrong. But I think this Genesis game, the Genesis port of Cadash, was only released in America. These Stonefish look kind of scary, but in spite of how they look, their hitbox is very square, so it's very easy to avoid them. These wasps, they deal poison damage, which is unfortunate. Using the flying daggers makes it much easier to get rid of them. They're not nice, I don't like them, and now we're poisoned. And I forgot to buy Antidote. Antidote is essential because, just like the medicinal herbs, Antidote will automatically use itself whenever we're poisoned. I don't really know how the Genesis version of Cadash is thought of. These tree monsters, by the way, shoot lasers out of their eyes. Doesn't deal a lot of damage. Anyway, I'm not sure how the Genesis port of Cadash is thought of, but I quite like it. Anyway, we're about to fight the Kraken, and we're going to be using the Flame Wall spell to fight the Kraken. Let's walk past the young girl here, hey. And it's time to fight the Kraken. Kraken is here, and he is angry. So we're going to be using the Flame Wall spell to attack the Kraken's tentacles. If we get too close and try to attack the Kraken's tentacles with another spell, or with our wand, just by bashing it, that would be bad. Because the Kraken hurts us just by touching us, in addition to hurting us with those water balls he's shooting out. And if it looks like we're in trouble, like we're about to die and we're running out of medicinal herbs, don't worry. Remember, we have continues, and I did buy an extra one before we came here. So even if we do die, we'll be fine. And we can, yeah, see, like that, we can continue. And then we'll buy another continue later. So don't worry about it. Like I said, it's all about the preparation. Keep mental stock of how many continues you have, and you should be fine, you know? You can always go back to the town to heal yourself, if you're not adequately prepared. And it's not like you have to fight the Kraken when you're level 7 like I'm doing here. You can level up more first, and you may want to do that. But I'm not worried. Even though I'm dying a lot, I'm not worried in the slightest. I have beaten this game dozens of times, and although most of the time it was with a co-op partner, I still trust in my ability. Now let's go free that young lady we've heard so much about. Let's just knock that down. Yeah, I don't really know who I am either. I just kind of appeared one day, and I'm here to save the world. It's just kind of what I do. Oh, she has something she must tell us. I wonder if it's a mermaid related, because we did hear a legend about a mermaid in these caves, and a legendary mermaid skill that would allow people to walk underwater without being harmed. And that sounds useful, because currently touching water does harm us for some reason. Come on, lady, keep up. It's sad that the old man can walk faster than you. Come on. We're almost there. So this game's story reminds me a lot of a traditional, goofy tabletop RPG story. Like, you go from town to town, saving the local townsfolk as you progress to the world-threatening danger. And I quite like that. Anyway, the mermaid/young girl is giving us her story, and she's asking us kindly to please not tell the old lady that she was a mermaid right here. Please do not tell her mom that she was a mermaid, because it would make her sad. And this is actually code for they didn't bother to program the old lady reacting to this. If you do try to go back and tell the old lady that her daughter was a mermaid, you can't. It won't let you, because they didn't bother to program a reaction for that. Anyway, we have the scale of the mermaid now, so we can walk underwater. And walking underwater doesn't have a special animation or anything, you just kind of walk, but underwater. Like your character is now on top of the water texture. But anyway, that's it for this dungeon. It's a really pretty dungeon. Makes really good use of the Genesis scrolling capabilities. Looks quite nice. I don't know why I'm talking like the dungeon is over when we still have the second half to go. And the second half is mostly underwater, after we get past these statues. Statues don't deal a lot of damage, really basic platforming hazards. But they can clip you in the butt, like that. That happens. And we're about to start walking underwater for the very first time. See a vine descending straight into the water, and some ooze. The ooze is honestly a greater challenge than a tree. So, with no fanfare, we just start walking underwater. These weird fish eye monsters, they hurt quite a bit, surprisingly. So we're going to use the flying daggers to get rid of them. If you were the fighter, you could just button mash your way through that, but as the mage, you want to be more careful, because he does take more damage than the fighter. And up here on this rope, there's a hidden weapon shop. And inside it, we can buy a one-of-a-kind staff that performs a function that no other staff in the game does. It's not a particularly useful function, but we can buy the fire staff in here. And the fire staff lets us shoot a basic projectile out of it, as I'm about to demonstrate. Yeah, see? Pew pew. It's not useful, though. The basic projectile that the fire staff shoots, not useful at all. It's pretty terrible. But it's kind of cute that that's an option. If you don't want to waste money on it, you don't have to. Anyway, through here is just a shortcut back to Marinade, the town where this whole Kraken adventure started, and we're going to pick up some items and then head to the next country. Alright, welcome to the third country, the Forest of the Gnomes, and my personal favorite country in the game. This one has a lot of fond memories for me because it's the most unique and because, hold on. The way is blocked by a high cliff. If only we knew how to ledge grab, we might be able to make it up there. Or if we brought some kind of rope, but sadly we did neither of these things. Anyway, I like the Forest of the Gnome because of its aesthetic, its weird music, and it has some fond memories for having a weird enemy type that's really easy to grind against. This rock guy. If you turn your back to these rockmen, they run at you really quickly. And that's their defining characteristic, is they run at you quickly while you're turned away from them. Their other characteristic is that they drop way too much experience in gold. So we're going to grind here until we reach level 14 before proceeding, and this will be the last grinding spot for us in the game. This is the last time I grind. At least the last time I grind for experience. That's not to say this was the last good grinding spot or anything like that. There is a really good grinding spot in the next country as well. We have the Blizzard spell now. We're not going to get a lot of use out of it. It's basically just a longer range flying dagger spell. So while it has its utilities, we're going to get something much better soon. Very soon. But yeah, I grind here for quite a long time. If you want to split the grinding up more, or not grind as much, or grind even more than me, those are all options. Just keep in mind the max level cap is 20. I just realized, I think earlier I called this the third country when it's actually the fourth country because the castle counts as its own country. You know, the place where we fought the Black Pudding. Anyway, here's a gnome village. Really cute gnome village. We can talk to the gnomes. They are very friendly people. The worm spins silk so strong that it won't break it no matter how many people swing from it. That silk sounds like it has rope-like characteristics, which we may need. We may need a rope, or something rope-like. So it sounds like we're gonna have to go fight that worm, because there don't seem to be any ropes in existence. We can't take any of these vines for some reason either. So it looks like we're gonna have to go fight a monster worm and take its silk to use as rope. I always found it weird that this particular gnome Joe Beam gets a name. A lot of people mention Joe Beam, and they tell you to come here to get advice from him. And that's a good idea, because he basically tells you everything you need to do. And this guy tells us there's a shop over there. And he's referring straight to our left, where there's a normal human-sized shop for whatever reason. But that's okay, because there's something in here we really want. This shop specifically, and only this shop, sells a magical bell, which increases our max hit points permanently. So we're going to buy as many of those as physically possible, until we can't carry anymore. And yes, there is an upper limit, of course. Otherwise, you could just increase your health until you had too many numbers and the game wouldn't know what to do. We're also going to need some medicinal herbs and antidotes, especially antidotes because there will be a lot of enemies that can poison us. I'm going to pretend I bought the antidotes, or pretend that we already have some, because I didn't see us buy some just there. But anyway, we know what we need to do now. We need to go fight the worm. We know basically where the worm is located. It's all good. Now we're going to head back to Marinade and refill our health at the inn, because we don't have access to an inn here yet, so I'll see you when I get back to this country. Alright, so we do have a little bit more business to take care of before we go get that worm. It's not necessary business, but I want to show you the other gnome town in the Forest of the Gnomes, because there are two. There's one up here as well. And this one has more buildings in it, as well as a unique song. We can still talk to the gnomes, they are very friendly. He tells us we are in the Forest of the Gnomes. That is correct. That is where we are. The houses here can only be entered by little people. Well, how do we become a little people? If you go to the left, you'll enter the Trackless Forest. The Trackless Forest is basically just the endless staircase from Mario, but in 2D. It just keeps teleporting you backwards. On the other side of the Trackless Forest grows the Lilliput Orchid, and that is how we become small. So we need to get on the other side of the Trackless Forest, but we can't just go straight through it. But we did hear that we may be able to get through the Trackless Forest if we climb that high cliff that we need that silkworm silk for. If I go straight down, they'll find a wise gnome named Joe Beam. Yeah, I've already talked to Joe Beam. He was very wise. He told us pretty much everything we need to know. So almost all the things you told us were not important. Almost. They did tell us that the item shop in this town has the silver key we need to progress to the next country, which is very crucial information. Because otherwise you may not know that, and you may be wondering where the key is. So how do we get to the worm? How do we defeat that worm and get its silk? Well, you remember where those rock guys were? Those rock guys we grinded against? The worm's past those guys. And we are now adequately leveled to get through there. So that shouldn't be too much of a problem. We will experience a lot of poisoning along the way via spiders and the worm itself. But it's alright, we'll figure it out when we get there. We have 210 health, we're level 14. I have faith in us, I have faith that we can handle this. The spells aren't that great for normal enemies, by the way. They're not that great for normal enemies. If you do want to use them against normal enemies, you have to use them before you get to the group of normal enemies, or not at all. Otherwise, what's the point? Because the spells have much too big a wind-up. So unless you can stand still like this... I said, unless you can stand still like this and use them casually, or you use them before you enter a group of enemies, then They're not that useful in combat against normal enemies, sadly. And this water isn't poison, it's just perfectly normal water. For some reason. Anyway, would you believe we're already at the worm? I did tell you that the dungeons in this game are rather short. Anyway, the worm is the first boss where we actually have to memorize a pattern. What the worm does is he rolls at us, and we need to jump over him as he rolls at us. We also need to be careful not to stay too close to the wall, because the worm will bounce off the wall, and when he bounces off the wall, he can bounce into us. We also shouldn't be using spells on the worm, because the worm is only vulnerable when he's uncurled, and he spends most of the fight curled up. So wasting time getting spells ready to cast is just time we could be spending hitting him with a stick instead. And he doesn't have that much health, as you just saw. Anyway, now we have obtained the Silk of the Worm, which has rope-like characteristics that we can use as rope to get up on that high cliff. You know, I think when I live-streamed this game last week, or maybe it was just a few days ago, it's hard to keep track of time, but I think when I live-streamed this game, I really didn't do it justice because I was playing as the fighter and was not really paying attention to anything. If you play as the mage, you really do need to pay more attention, and you need to better focus on the RPG mechanics than if you're playing as the fighter. Not that playing as the fighter is bad, it's still enjoyable, it's just, the game is much more generic as the fighter. That's not to say playing the game as the mage makes the game suddenly outstanding or anything like that, you know. The game still isn't a masterpiece or anything, but what it is adequately made, friendly toward the player, and approachable. Almost anyone can complete this game, as I've said, and that's what drew me to it. Is that this game is old, but it's not a bitch. This old action RPG game is not a bitch to the player. It's very nice, and it has all the amenities and pleasantries that you would expect from a modern game, you know? It's fine. It's a fine game. Anyone can play it. I like it for that reason. Why aren't more old games like this? You know, I'm not saying every game has to be made in such a way that everyone can approach it. But this level of caring about the player and having respect for their time, you know, and being decent toward the player, it's kind of unheard of for this era of gaming. And there are a few games that stick out to me in this era because of that. Like, Run Saber is a game that really sticks out, because I think Run Saber is a really fair action platformer that most people would be able to beat after a few tries through. And Mighty Morphin Power Rangers also stands out for that reason. But Cadash is of particular interest to me because Cadash is a 2D action RPG. And 2D action RPGs up until Cadash have a history of being really obtuse, not making any fucking sense, and having the NPCs all talking vague gibberish. But this game doesn't do that. And I've played a lot of retro games, you know, more retro games than all these 40-year-old people that complain about newer games have played. I've played a lot of retro games. Most retro games are not worth fantasizing about. They're not worth remembering fondly. They're not worth calling the golden age. That's not to say there weren't great games, but it's no greater an age of gaming than any other. There was a lot of shovelware. There were a lot of just plain unfair games. You know, I explored old retro games, a lot of them, even the Atari games, on actual hardware, mind you. And just like every other era of gaming, it's mixed, but, you know, the retro era is far more unfair than every other, unfair toward the player, unfair in what it expects of the player's patience and investment. Thankfully, a lot of retro throwback indie games are not as retro as they claim to be, otherwise that might be incredibly frustrating. I am very, very curious to play the arcade and TurboGrafx versions of Cadash, though. Because I wonder, are the things I like about Cadash only in the Genesis release? Or are the things I like about Cadash also present in the TurboGrafx and arcade releases? And if so, what changed in the design? I know the arcade version has a timer, for example, but that's pretty much all I know about the arcade version. It also has 2 more classes, but I can't remember what they are. And the TurboGrafx version was translated by Working Designs. So I'm incredibly curious about that one, because Working Designs here lets use the worm silk as a rope-like object. Because Working Designs has a habit of really screwing with the numbers in any of the RPGs they translate. So I'm wondering if it's the same for Cadash, since Cadash is an action RPG. Anyway, welcome to the second dungeon of the Forest of the Gnomes. This one does not have a boss at the end. It does have really irritating claymen that pop out of the ground. And they pop out of the ground so quickly that you're likely to walk right into them unless you're shuffling slowly across the ground like I am right here. Have to slowly shuffle your way to victory. I don't think those plants that spit acid can poison you, surprisingly. I would expect them to be able to poison you, but I don't believe they can. Anyway, we have the lightning spell now. The lightning spell instantly locks onto any enemy on screen, but it can also be used to find enemies that aren't visible yet. That's kind of a waste of your MP, but if you want to use it for that, you can. These spiky enemies can't be killed. Don't bother. Those enemies with the blue shells with spikes coming out, you can't kill them, not even with magic, so don't bother. Just jump over them. Not that it matters if you take a few hits. If you're my level, we're level 16 and the max level is 20, so you know, we can tank quite a bit at this point. You know, another thing I like about Cadash is I don't think I've played a game that felt so much like a full-fledged RPG, but also was so short. Anyway, right here there's a Harpy Monster, and we're going to use the lightning to get rid of her. The Harpy Monsters are actually incredibly frustrating to get as the fighter. That's one enemy type where the Mage definitely has an advantage. Anyway, as I was saying, I can't think of another RPG that I feel is a full-fledged RPG like this one, but is also so short. Because this game is only 90 minutes long if you're playing it like I am. I'm sure it's shorter if you don't grind as much, and with two people it's definitely much shorter, but... You know, this game is short, but it doesn't feel short. It feels like a full adventure. It feels like a whole RPG, a light RPG, I guess you could say, but it doesn't feel like there's design missing, or that there should have been more, or anything like that. It feels like an entire adventure. I hope I'm making sense. If I'm not, that's okay, because I'm just trying to get across my love for this game any way I can. And if my love doesn't make sense, I'm just going to have to accept that. You know, love is a magnificent and sometimes terrifying thing. It doesn't always make sense, but it is strong. That's why I'm Let's Playing Cadash right now. Anyway, we're on the other side of the Trackless Forest, and we have the Lilliput Orchid. So we can become a gnome if we drink it, right now. And now we're tiny. And we can enter the small buildings, and the gnomes don't have anything new to say, though. They say the same thing they did before. Anyway, we can enter these buildings now, which is handy. Because now we have access to the inn, the armory, and the item shop, which we can use to grab a new robe for the mage. We can use to grab items for our journey, and we can use to grab the silver key to go to the next country. So we're all done in the Forest of the Gnomes, or so it would seem. But we actually need a bit more money to buy the silver key. You see, we don't quite have enough money to buy the silver key. So we're going to have to go do a little bit more grinding against those rock guys, and pick up some extra cash. And then I'll be back to buy that key. Alright, so after we do buy this key, we'll already be on our way to the fifth and final country of the world, where we can finally face the Balrog. Or the Balrog, if you play any of the other versions. Speaking of the other versions again, I know I keep bringing them up. I wanted to know if the Taito Legends collections had Cadash for the arcade. And it turns out Taito Legends 2 does have Cadash for the arcade, but only the Xbox version. And the Xbox version was not released where I live. So that kind of blows. Anyway, it's time for the fifth and final country. Don't expect pleasant things from this next country. Unlike the Forest of the Gnomes, this next one won't be so pleasant. So welcome to the fifth and final country, and we're just going to call this one Destroyed Country, if that's alright with you, because, as you'll see, It's been utterly fucked up. Oh hey look, a sea of flame. On the other side of the sea of flame we see a castle. Well, I'm going to assume that's the castle of the Balrog, and that's where we need to go. But we can't jump into the flame. We can talk to these skeletons, though. You see, in the world of Cadash, death is an inconvenience. You just kinda... Death just means you kinda have to stand in one place, but you can still talk to people, as you're seeing. We're having no issue talking to these skeletons and getting the backstory. Apparently a gang of bandits did all this. Killed all the people and utterly razed their land. A single gang of bandits did all this? I find that hard to believe. But we will avenge these people, because they didn't deserve this. Reading the stone, you see that this is the grave of Abel, and Abel has a dog. The dog seems upset, as a dog would be. There's zombies, also. This country has zombies, because it's going for a really creepy destroyed thing. This is a really good place to grind, by the way. If you haven't grinded enough already yet, this is a really good place to do that. But I think we're done grinding. There's also lightning. When you reach these gravestones in the rain, there's lightning. And if you don't want to get struck by the lightning, you have to gently scoot yourself forward. So that way the lightning strikes at your sides and doesn't hit you directly. We really need a better staff. Our staff really isn't cutting it anymore attack power-wise. We could use our magic on these zombies, but that seems like a bit of a waste. There are better uses for our magic than that. Anyway, one of those skeletons did say some people escaped into the caves. Let's look at these caves. Oh, the caves are all bones. The caves are all dead people. This cave is made entirely out of dead people. It's a really complex cave, too. So I can only imagine how big this country used to be before the bandits arrived. And presumably built this entire cave out of dead people. That's impressive. You know, this is shockingly gruesome and horrifying compared to the Forest of the Gnomes. I was not quite prepared for this. Anyway, let's see if we can find those... Oh, hey, there's a bandit. But he tells us to get out of his way and then punches us. Which is very rude. It looks like that dog by Abel's grave was chasing him. And here's the dog. But the dog can't speak English. And we can see what looks like something on the other side of this wall, but we can't go through the wall. That would be silly. So for now, it looks like we lost our trail. But one of those skeletons did say that some people escaped into the cave, so maybe some of them are still alive. Even though this cave is made out of deceased humans, maybe some of the deceased humans aren't deceased. Maybe some of them are still around and not dead, and we can ask them about where the bandits might be. Because that's our only lead at this point. Things here aren't so good, as I said in the last video. Things in this country aren't so well. Things in the Forest of the Gnomes pretty alright. Nothing really going wrong in the Forest of the Gnomes. Nobody in immediate danger. Nobody need rescued. But this country's past the point of being rescued, really. We're on a mission of vengeance now. This isn't even about rescue. We've just got to avenge all these dead people we're stepping on. Because the bandits killed them. Again, just a gang of bandits did all this? These are some sturdy bandits. Like, these are some right murderous, awful bandits. Like, when you think bandits, I don't usually think this level of destruction. Because look at all this. They built an entire cave out of the corpses of their victims. That's just insanity. Just utter insanity. So, anyway, I should mention, while we're here, that there's going to be a lot of backtracking in this country in particular because of the way it's set up, and I will be cutting out the backtracking. This country isn't particularly any more difficult than any of the others. It is a lot more metal, though. It has some interesting enemy types. It's a lot more metal. It's a lot gloomier, a lot more messed up. But this is the same country where the Balrog's castle resides. So maybe the Balrog has something to do with the bandits destroying this place. This room right here with the vines and spinning fire pinwheels, this room can be very dangerous in co-op. Because if you aren't both on the same section of the screen and co-op in this room, then one of you is going to get stuck. It just happens. So while I do think playing this game in co-op is incredibly fun, Oh, we got the Elixir of Life, which is an extra life. Anyway, while playing this game in co-op is incredibly fun and I recommend it, please be very careful of this room in particular if you play co-op. This room can be a problem. We have to be nearing the end of these caves, right? How many dead people can there be? Oh, Jesus. Look, it's another sea of flame. But this one has platforms, so we can actually cross this one. I have only once successfully completed this platforming challenge, and I did it live on stream as the fighter. I do not expect myself to complete this platforming challenge successfully a second time. Yeah, that's normally what happens, is I fall into the fire and have to walk through it. We can't walk through the other Sea of Flame, though. That one is much too deep. Unlike this one. Oh, I spy a village. It looks like some people did survive after all, and this old man will tell us, yes, this is a sanctuary for the few that escaped. What do we want here, he asked. Well, what we want is information about where we might find the bandits. Because we're on a vengeance mission to destroy all the bandits for what they did to your country. I think that's a valid reason to be here. Ah, good, a wand upgrade. The Staff of the Mage is what this one is called. Packs quite a punch, not just in terms of spell casting, but also you can hit really good with it. This will be the final staff for the Mage. Anyway, let's refill our health, because we only have 7 HP, which is not a significant amount. A lot of people on this, a castle where the Balrog lives on the other side of the Sea of Flame. Yeah, that's where we're headed. A lot of people in this inn. Don't normally see a lot of people in the inn, but I guess it makes sense here, you know. When your entire country is in ruins, you want some small sense of comfort, and an inn seems like a good place for that. Uncle Abel used to have a magic charm to let him talk to dogs. Well, hey, we want to talk to dogs. Bandits have a magic flute that lets them cross the Sea of Flame. Man, we're just learning all sorts of useful stuff today. So, Abel had a magic flute that let him talk to dogs. And the bandits have something that... Sorry. Abel had a magic charm that lets him talk to dogs. And the bandits have a flute that lets them cross the Sea of Flame. Oh, and Abel's widowed wife is right here. Man, we're just learning everything we need to know in this one town. It's a good thing these people were still alive, or we may be stuck forever. Yes, about your late husband. Oh, he was a very kind man who loved animals. Yeah, we heard about the loving animals part, so... Okay, we'll place that charm on his grave for you, but, when we come back, we'd like to hear about his ability to speak to dogs. Because that seems like it would be of particular interest to us, ma'am. Because we have a certain dog we would like to be able to speak to, a dog that was chasing a bandit earlier. Right through this doorway, we'll find a shortcut back to the entrance of these dreadful corpse caves. And then we have to make our way all the way back to the start of the country and place the charm on Abel's grave. Alright, hey Abel, what's up? Oh, now we can talk to Abel, just like the skeletons. Yes, your wife is alive. I don't know about well. She's physically well. Look inside your grave. If you insist we look inside your grave, I'm not into a habit of doing that. Oh, we got his charm. Now I may communicate with animals. Now that we can communicate with animals, we can talk to that dog. I'll be rooting for you on the other side. Thank you. No one's ever said that to me before. That's actually kind of reassuring. I think the reason no one said that to me before is probably because most of the people I know aren't dead. Don't actually know a lot of dead people. It's kind of hard to know a dead person, as dead people don't generally have personalities in real life, but they do here, which is a pleasant change of pace. But anyway, now that we have the magic charm, we can go talk to that dog that was chasing the bandit. And if you're thinking, hey, can we go talk to those creatures back in the Forest of Gnomes? No, you can't. I'm sorry to disappoint you. This charm only lets us talk to doggies. So we're going to go talk to that dog that was chasing the bandit. And maybe that dog will know something about the bandits, and if he does, we can fight the bandits and get their flute, so we can go fight the Balrog. Quite a little fetch quest we've got going on here, but if I recall correctly, the dog is right up this way. Please stop shooting lightning at us, Mr. Grim Reaper. Hopefully the dog is still in the same place. I don't want to have to go find the dog, too. Oh, there he is. And now we can talk to him. And he'll tell us exactly how to find the bandits. Don't worry, we will avenge Abel for you. Set up a hideout on the other side of the wall. Push the wall on the right side. There should be a corridor that leads to their hideout. Oh, so we do have to walk through the wall, okay. In case you're curious, no, you can't walk through the wall before you talk to the dog. You have to talk to the dog first. Alright, Bandit, your lair looks a little unusual. But alright, Bandit, we're here to get you. We're here to avenge the village. Oh, the fire elemental appears. So yeah, the bandit was a fire elemental the whole time. If you're wondering why the country was in ruins from a simple gang of bandits, it's because the bandits have a fire elemental on their side. And the fire elemental completely razed their country and destroyed everything. And now we're fighting said fire elemental. But we're going to do a better job because we have a staff to poke him in the eye, and now he's dead. That was pretty quick. I have obtained the magic flute. Now we can go across the Sea of Flame. We also have the explosion spell, which is useless. Alright, so now that we have the magic flute, we can cross the Sea of Flame and make our way to Castle Balrog at last. Like I said, this is a short game, but it feels like a significant journey, like a significant JRPG, even though it is rather short. Also, Castle Balrog has my favorite Genesis music of all time, so I'll let you listen to that a bit when we first enter, because we're going to be in there a while. So yeah, pretty good shit, pretty good shit. Anyway, I wouldn't call Castle Balrog a maze exactly, but if there were any place it was acceptable to get lost in the game, it would be Castle Balrog. I have gotten lost here a couple of times, but it's not that difficult to navigate because it is such a small place. And again, this did used to be an arcade game, so having anything excessively labyrinthine would be a poor idea. It also just happens to work in the favor of the player, much like many other things in this game. Even though this level is more labyrinthine, it is not labyrinthine. And I appreciate that. Anyway, that golden door down there leads to the Balrog, but we're not headed there yet because we don't have the golden key to fight the Balrog. Instead, we have to go find the golden key. Oh yeah, and rescue the princess while we're at it. There was something about rescuing a princess in there somewhere. So we have to do both of those things now that we're finally in Castle Balrog. Or again, Castle Balrog, if you live in Japan or are playing the TurboGrafx release. But I'm sure nothing too unexpected will stop us. Oh hey, a giant dragon. As I was saying, I'm sure nothing too unexpected will stop us on our journey. Not even these statues that we've seen before. You know, what really can there be to the Balrog after what we've been through? We just fought and easily destroyed a giant fire elemental, so I mean, really, what good can a Balrog do? I don't know what a Balrog is, but it doesn't sound that threatening. You know? Sounds kinda harmless, sounds kinda cuddly. Oh hey, oh, it's the Jelly Giant, which is just a recolored black pudding. But they call it a Jelly Giant this time. And it's dead. So that was nothing. This is quite a large tower. This is where I would keep a princess first. Oh, hey, the princess. Yes, we have come to rescue you. Salasa, daughter of the king of Durzar. Yeah, we're actually here because of him. Your father, I mean. Oh. Your father tried to rescue you, but he's dead? No, yeah, we saw your dad. He's definitely alive. There is a key to the Balrog's lair somewhere. Don't worry, we're gonna find it. But now that you're safe, that's half of the job done. That's weird. The princess says that she saw her dad die. But we know for a fact that her dad is alive because he's the one who told us to fight the Balrog. So we know that her dad is alive. I wonder what could be going on there. Anyway, now we have 3 elixirs of life, which if you're keeping track, means 3 extra lives in addition to the continues we already bought. So, you know, we're ready. We're at the max level. We have the best equipment. We have several continues. All we need is that golden key, and we can fight the Balrog himself. But to get the golden key, we have to make our way past some platforming first. And the platforming in this game controls fine, but you notably cannot change your direction while in the air. So, you know, don't try and do that. You know, I don't think I'd actually call this game a platformer. A lot of people may look at this game and be like, oh yeah, that's a 2D platformer, but I don't think I'd call this game a platformer. There is platforming in it, but most of the game is combat and exploration. There's not really that much jumping. To the point that when there is jumping, it's remarkable because it's kind of out of place. Oh hey, there's the golden key. Let's head to that door and fight the Balrog, but first, here's a secret shop. And in this secret shop is the gold armor for the fighter character. The gold armor is ridiculously overpowered, as if the knight wasn't already overpowered enough. But we're not the fighter/knight, so we can't get the golden armor. Let's just go fight the Balrog instead. Alright, the time we've waited for is at hand. We will now face the Balrog and stop him from ruining any more lives or countries with his bandits/fire elementals. Right after we duck underneath these eyeballs. These completely harmless eyeballs, really basic obstacles. Not a threat in the slightest, have never been hit by them even once. The eyeballs at the beginning of the game are more threatening, in fact. But you know, it was a long road to get here. I know it may not feel long, but it was, especially for our mage character, but now we're nearing the end at least. It's almost time. Just checking to make sure that we had Antidote. Because, yeah, we have to fight the worm again. For some reason, I don't get why. Maybe so that way you can get inflicted with a poison status before you fight the Balrog. But you can always go back to town and use the N, and the worm stays defeated. So it seems like kind of a pointless mini-boss, really. But we're going to fight the Balrog even while we're poisoned, because we have more than enough continues to tank the Balrog if it ever gets dangerous. So I'm not too concerned, really, and the worm should be dead soon. Has more hits than last time, that's for sure. Doesn't go down as easy as a jelly giant. Now Balrog, there you are, finally. I finally found you, it's time to end this. I fought your jelly giant, I fought your worm. It's time to destroy you, it's time to save the world, which is what I do. We've been all over the world. So it's time to fight the Balrog himself, and perhaps unsurprisingly he flies around and attempts to use our own lightning magic against us. And it hurts, sure, but you can easily avoid it just by walking away when he uses it, as you saw. You know, you see him start to cast it, you just walk away, and he can't hit you with it. Really kind of underwhelming for the mastermind behind all this pain and suffering. But you know, I guess that's why he has so many henchmen, is because he's not prepared to fight himself. He wasn't prepared for this. And that's good, because that means that fighting him will be much easier. We have our own lightning, you see, and I think our lightning is superior. Mostly because we have more of it, and we have more health. We don't really need to dodge the Balrog's lightning spell, we just can if we feel like it. You know, it's not— oh, hey, the Balrog's head exploded, looks like we won. That was easy. Oh no, the Balrog is a dragon! Who could have expected such an immense twist? So, how to fight the dragon is the mage. Stand in the corner and cast lightning. That's how I recommend fighting the dragon as the mage. Is you stand in the corner and cast lightning. Very rarely, the dragon will be able to hit you over here. So this is ideal. We will die of poison eventually, but if we didn't die of poison, this would work fine. We are kind of low on MP though, so maybe dying of poison isn't all that bad because our MP will also refill whenever we die. It will also refill naturally, but that takes a while. Anyway, this boss, really underwhelming for a final boss. As you're seeing here, I have found the optimal strategy to fight it. If you're playing as the fighter, the optimal strategy is just more button mashing, as it usually is. Oh, we won. It will be so wonderful to see your beloved Durzar again. Let's go back there right now. Hey guys, we did it! Saved the world. Kicked ass. You're not looking so good, man. Don't be too sure of myself. The Balrog still lives! Oh no, did the Balrog do all of this? Destroy this castle and leave everybody lying hurt like this? Not dead, mind you. For some reason, they're not dead. Everybody's wounded. There's nobody left to talk to. Can't leave the castle either. I suppose the Balrog was responsible for this. We did see him fly away, but I thought we had defeated him for sure. This is so strange. We better report to the king and tell him about this, because, I mean, hopefully the princess is still safe, but we need to tell the king and princess about this, assuming they don't already know, which I would think they would. King's throne room is up here. King, I've got some bad news. Everything went all shit-shaped. Oh, no, we also have bad... Oh, you're aware, yes, yeah, some bad things happened. Attacked you mercilessly, and as you see, the palace has been utterly destroyed. Well, the palace looks fine. You don't look very wounded, King. I was about to ask you about that. Oh, that's not your father? I wonder how we could have seen this plot twist coming. You know, this is just so unexpected. Balrog, King of the Demons, was the king the whole time. And now we get to do this fight again. You remember that fight against the dragon that we just did? Now we get to do it again. We get to fight the dragon again a second time. Cool. In case you're wondering why we have to fight the dragon a second time, I don't know. I mean, probably so that way you would lose and have to start the game over. But you're not going to lose and have to start the game over if you made it this far. Because if you made it this far, you know how to play the game. And as such, losing won't happen. You know, we have like 5 continues. And way too much health, and we're level 20. So we're not going to lose now. We wouldn't even really have to dodge the Balrog's attacks if we didn't want to. I'm just dodging them because I can. Anyway, when the Balrog is at half health, it will grow another head and shoot a second kind of projectile, which is easily jumped over. Kind of an anticlimactic final boss, but the journey here was fun. So I hope you enjoyed Cadash. I love Cadash, like I said, one of my favorite Genesis games by far. I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's definitely one of my favorites, and you should play it. Anyone can play it. It's not a difficult game. Grab your brother, grab your sister, or grab just a friend that likes video games in general. Ask them to play Cadash with you. They'll probably have a good time, assuming you play it right. And it's not difficult to play right, as I've demonstrated. Just remember what I said at the very beginning, alright? Play as the fighter if you don't want to think, play as the mage if you do want to think. Yes, the game is not terribly strategic either way, but you have to think more as the mage, so whoever plays as the fighter will have to think less, that's all I'm saying. The fighter is very good for button mashing. Listen, Balrog, we have so many extra lives you don't stand a chance. How many extra lives do you have? Because I don't think you have even 1 extra life, Balrog. You just have a second head. How does that work, by the way? Do you have 2 brains? Or is the second head just for a second projectile and it doesn't really do anything else? Oh, I guess I can't ask now because you're dead.